All right, today we're jumping into the book Jesus Among Secular Gods by Ravi Zacharias and Vince Vitale. We're going to break down their core arguments and really get into how they look at life's biggest questions, putting different worldviews head to head. So the authors basically build their entire case around one single powerful idea, and it's this. Deep down, every single one of us is searching for answers, but there's one question that rises above all the others. They start by asking this, and it's a huge one. Because, whether we even think about it or not, the answer we land on, well, that becomes the foundation for pretty much everything else we believe and do. To really drive this home, they bring in the philosopher Mortimer Adler, and his point is just massive. He's saying that whether you believe in God or not is the ultimate fork in the road. Everything else in your life, your entire worldview, it all flows from that one single decision. So the book kind of boils all this down into four key questions that they argue every single person and every worldview has to deal with. The big ones. Why are we here? How do we find happiness? Why is there so much suffering? And where did we even come from? Okay, so once they've laid out these huge questions, the book pivots and starts looking at some of the modern answers out there. It dives into several secular worldviews, what they call secular gods, to really see if they hold up. And the first worldview they put under the microscope is atheism. But here's the thing. They don't just argue against its conclusions. They go way deeper, and they start to question the basic assumptions you have to make for it to even work. The book argues that atheism runs into some really tough questions about our origins. And this is a big one. How exactly does life just pop up from non-living stuff? They even cite another source that lists out these leaps of logic that an atheistic worldview has to explain. And the real tricky part, as the book sees it, is explaining how you get something from its complete opposite, right? Like, how does order emerge from pure chaos? Or how do you get a sense of right and wrong from a universe that's just matter and energy, with no morality built in? So next up, the book takes on hedonism. The belief that the highest good in life is just pleasure. It's that simple idea, if it feels good, do it. Now, to test this idea, they bring up a really cool thought experiment. Imagine there's this machine. You can plug into it for your entire life, and it'll give you a perfect simulation of anything you've ever wanted. You could be a world-famous musician, you could have the most amazing relationships, but none of it would be real. You'd just be floating in a tank somewhere. So the big question is, would you do it? Would you plug in? The authors argue that most of us instinctively would say no way. And why is that? Well, it's because we don't just want the feeling of achieving something or the feeling of being loved. We want the real thing. And that suggests that maybe truth is actually more important to us than just feeling good. Okay, so after poking holes in these secular worldviews, the book totally shifts gears and starts to build its own positive case. It starts looking for clues of a creator, but not in some ancient book, in modern physics and the study of the cosmos itself. And the central idea here is something called fine-tuning. The argument is that the fundamental laws of our universe, things like the strength of gravity, the rate of expansion, are balanced on an absolute knife's edge. They seem to be perfectly and pretty unbelievably set up just right for life to exist. And to give you a sense of just how precise this is, one physicist they cite in the book calculates the odds of the Big Bang's explosive force being what it was. The number they came up with is 1 in 10 to the power of 60. I mean, that's a 1 with 60 zeros after it. It's just an astronomical number. To put that number in perspective, think about it this way. If the Big Bang had been just a tiny, tiny fraction stronger, all the matter would have just flown apart too fast for stars and galaxies to ever form. But if it had been a tiny fraction weaker, the whole universe would have just collapsed back in on itself almost immediately. So, yeah, a cosmic disaster either way. So, based on this fine-tuning evidence, the book says we can start to piece together a profile of whatever did the fine-tuning. It would have to be incredibly powerful and smart to get those cosmic dials just right. It would have to exist before the universe began. And it would have to be personal, meaning it had the desire and the will to create a universe that could support life like us. So if the universe itself points towards some kind of personal creator, well, the next logical question is, has this creator ever tried to communicate with us? And that brings us to the final part of the book, where they lay out their case for why the Christian answer is so unique. One of the book's main arguments really hinges on this contrast between different ways to get to God. Now, the authors specifically compare their understanding of Christianity and Islam on this question of salvation. They describe the Christian view as being all about grace. It's a free gift, which means you can have assurance. They then contrast that with how they describe the Islamic view, which they frame as being based on works, where your good deeds and bad deeds are weighed on a scale and you can never really be sure you've done enough. And to show just how much this difference matters to people, the authors share this really powerful quote from a conversation one of them had. Just listen to the longing in that statement. The next big countercultural claim the book makes is about the problem of pain. The argument is that, unlike some distant God who just sits back and watches, the Christian God is one who doesn't just observe our suffering, but actually enters into it personally. This quote really gets to the core of their argument about suffering. The whole idea is that God can be truly present with us in our pain because he chose to experience it himself. That's what gives a unique foundation for real comfort. And the book really puts a human face on this with the story of a student named Ariel. She's facing a terminal diagnosis, and yet she's described as having this incredible peace. And that peace was rooted in her belief that she wasn't alone in her suffering, that her pain was actually understood and shared by God himself. So at the end of the day, the book's final position is basically this. Christianity isn't being presented as just a set of rules to follow or a ladder to climb. Instead, it's presented as a relationship that offers a really distinct and, they argue, compelling answer to those deep human questions we all ask about meaning, happiness, and suffering. And so, the book kind of ends right back where it started. It turns the question back over to us, the reader. After looking at all these different paths, the authors leave us with the challenge of figuring out which path, if any, holds the most compelling answers for our own lives. Because in the end, this whole philosophical journey, it's always a personal one.